Alright, so I had the Battle of the Bulge, and I'm going to do a battle analysis of this battle. The Battle of the Bulge was also known as the Ardennes counteroffensive of the German army. It was from December 16th, 1944 through January 25th, 1945. So Hitler was still hoping to drive the Allies back because he was trying to concentrate on the war in the West. And in the late 1944, he assembled on the Western Front all of the manpower that he had gotten from his Volkssturm, or Home Guard. That's German for Home Guard. It was basically a total mobilization decree on October 18th for the defense of the Third Reich. So this is Adolf Hitler, as you might know. He led the German forces. But he had appointed this man named, here we go, Karl Rudolf Gerd von Rundstedt. He was basically the commander-in-chief in the Western Front for the Germans. He actually had a pretty interesting history with Adolf Hitler in his command throughout the German history. He would be brought in, kicked back, not kicked, but he would be brought in and dismissed, and brought in and dismissed, and Hitler called him back in for his final post in September of 1944, just before the Battle of the Bulge began in December. And this guy was really old. He was probably about 68 at the time when Hitler brought him back to be the commander-in-chief in the West. Now that we've covered the Volkssturm, or Home Guard, we're going to fast forward a little bit to mid-November. Mid-November is when the Allies kept pushing the Western Front, and that's when they had launched their general offensive attack against the Germans. The only problem was, as the Allies kept pushing, they kept thinning, but the Germans' defense would be strengthened with reserves from that Home Guard that Hitler had called in October. So the Germans were building up their front, and Hitler was deciding on if he was going to launch a counteroffensive or just sit where he was. All right, so now it's mid-December, and the Germans have created this huge counteroffensive built up, and this ended up being 24 divisions that were ready to attack under the command of Rundstedt. It was going to be, the idea was that it would be started through the Ardennes forest, which is a heavily wooded area, and it was a good plan because it was the weakest sector of the U.S. man front, between Monschau, which is southwest of Aachen, and Echternach. I don't really know how to pronounce that, which was northwest of Trier. The 5th Panzer Army, which is in the bottom right of this picture, which is the left flank, or the left side of the front. The plan was to have them attack from the left, while the German 7th, which is also down there, you can see, they would protect the left flank and cut off that left side, while the German 6th Panzer Army would cut off the top or the right side, and that would be cutting off the supply lines of the British and the Canadian forces at the northern end. So that basically, you know how it works. You cut off the supplies, you just outlast them in the battle, and if they can't get any supplies, then they don't have any soldiers to feed or fight. So once the Germans began to attack, that was launched on December 16th, 1944, which was the kickstart of the Battle of the Bulge. So the Germans they attacked with 8 German armor divisions, which was along a 75 mile front, which ranged from all the way south, where the Fifth Panzer Division was, all the way up to the Sixth, which you can't really see on this picture, but it's way up there. So it stretched 75 miles. You have the Germans covering all of this ground here in the middle with the red, and I mean that was a successful counteroffensive. We had all these troops on the blue here that they overran, but now we're going to get to the most famously known part of the Battle of the Bulge, which is Bastogne, which is located on the left side of the map here. And as you know, Bastogne, that's the TV show, The Band of Brothers. That's the Battle of Bastogne. That's where they got bombed for days in their foxholes. So the goal of the German offense for Bastogne was the harbor at Antwerp, because in order to reach it before the Allies could regroup and bring their air defense or air offense against the Germans. So the German mechanized forces had to seize those roadways through eastern Belgium. And the thing was, all 7 of those main roadways were in the Ardennes forest, and they converged at Bastogne. That's why Bastogne was such a pivotal point in the war. And that's where the U.S. made its sort of stand, or that's why they had positioned troops there. It was the 28th Infantry Division, and actually the 28th Infantry Division was kind of on the front lines quite a bit, and they had put them there in Bastogne because it was believed to be a kind of quieter place. There was no intel had pointed to no large-scale German attack because it was not suitable because of the Ardennes forest. So when they were actually attacked, it kind of took the U.S. and Allied forces by surprise. But luckily we had experienced soldiers there because they had been on the front lines throughout the last 6 months. But yeah, so the 7 roadways leading into Bastogne were the reason the German forces wanted to take Bastogne. It's actually late December, and the U.S. are just getting bombarded at Bastogne by German artillery, and this is when Patton's Third Army steps in, and once Patton comes in, it's over for the Germans. He had them wiped out by the 20. He had them stopped by the 26th of December, and that's when about 5,000 Allied aircraft began to bomb and strafe the German forces in their supply lines. There was nothing really the Germans could do at that point once Patton's Third Army came in. And between January 8th and January 16th is when Patton's army just pushed them back. It took him 8 days to just push the Germans back, made them withdraw, and they just didn't have anywhere to go but back to Germany. So now we're going to look at the casualties of just the Battle of the Bulge. So the Allied forces started out with around 80,000 troops, and that was spread out from the south, the southern end of the front, all the way to the north, up where the Germany-Belgium line is up there, but all the way through Luxembourg, all the way to Bastogne. We had troops within there. So we started with about 80,000, and the Germans started with 200,000. As I was saying, they had all those reinforcements come in from that home guard, that Volkssturm, earlier in October. So we were already outnumbered, and our line was stretched thin over those 75 miles. And and then once the Germans attacked and came through, we were suffering heavy casualties up until the point where they got to Bastogne, and our U.S. troops held them off for about 7 days of bombing, and Patton's Third Army came in. That's when we had our 600,000 plus troops against their about 500,000 at that point. But at that point, it was our air superiority that overtook the German soldiers and pushed them back. So at the end of the war, they had tallied up the Allied soldiers to around between 75 and 100,000 deaths, and the German soldiers between 90,000 to 120,000. And that was just a 35-40 battle. So, but shortly after that is when the Axis powers surrendered, just about 4 months later on May 8th of 1945, about a week after Hitler committed suicide. So the Battle of the Bulge was considered one of the most pivotal points in the war, towards the end of the war, I should say, because it's speculated that if the Allies had lost that, then there would have been some other form of treaty signed, or the war could have gone on for many more years after that. So the holding of Bastogne and the Battle of the Bulges was a very, very key point for the Allies to win. But are there any questions? No, there's not, because you can't really ask me any questions.